Okay. Good day, everybody. I'm not going to use the microphone because, firstly, I think I'm loud enough, and secondly, it will distract me to hear my own voice through the speakers. And I'm sitting down because my back hurts. I have a slip. My back hurts.
I
Yes,
understand. That's okay.
And I'm going to try and go fast so there's time for everybody else. So anyway, so this is the official title of my research, and I'll break down each concept as I go along. It's a mouthful, I know, but basically what I wanted to do was see if culture played any role in how different cultures work or approach work, and then also if that affects suicide rates. And I specifically chose Japan and the West, and I'll explain in further slides why I did that. I did only secondary research, so I looked at peer-reviewed journals, government stats, and media, and I did only a correlational study. So I took objective facts and I found a correlation. I didn't do causality because that would involve primary research, which I know you would have liked, but because this is my final semester and I'm doing my thesis, my focus is on my thesis, which is on blockchain and other things, so I didn't have time. It would have been too time intensive to do it to journal standards. And then also sampling would have been a problem. You need a representative sample to make the results worthwhile. So I don't do something if it's not going to be perfect. So that's why I don't do it. Okay, so the two major concepts about my study is karoshi and karojisatsu. I wish Mark was here. Japanese guy. Basically, they are Japanese terms for death by overwork. So the first one on the left is by heart attacks and strokes, and then the other one is suicide from overwork, and I'll explain how and why that happens. And then I wanted to compare Japanese organizational culture versus Swedish, because they, I don't know if you know, recently did this, a 6-hour workday trial. So I wanted to compare the extremes, where in one country they work too much, and the other country where they actually reduced working hours, and see how did that turn out. So my research questions were specifically, why does Japan have such high suicide rates? Is their culture actually killing employees? And which organizational cultural approach yields greater socioeconomic benefits from a utilitarianism perspective? So I wanted to see basically which of these approaches give the greatest good for the greatest amount of people, for those of you studying business ethics this semester. And all of this is done through cultural influences and culturalist discourse, and I try to be as PC as possible. That's not my opinion, this is all me presenting to you objective research that I've done from peer review. Every stat that I've given, I can back up with actual sources. None of it's my opinion. I didn't make up any of this, and I just want to say it's not my opinion, and I'm not trying to criticize either culture. Okay, moving on. So how did it all start? I saw this, and this really caught my attention. Now this is a social media platform, and I saw this on Facebook. And when I saw this dead body and then the outline and the title "Work to Death," I was really intrigued. So I decided to look into this, and then I found that it's a documentary filmmaker from Costa Rica, and that's her Instagram page. So I follow her now, and she's quite hot too, which helps. Yes. So basically, her idea was Now This platform, Now This there, is promoting her work. She's trying to crowdfund money to make this documentary about death by overwork. And basically, what she wanted to do, and what she wanted to know, is how someone can start their day at the office and end up like that, on the street. And then what she did was she used a pancake mix to outline the body, to make it look like a death-like scene, to make it look more dramatic. So that guy's not dead, he's just so exhausted that he, literally collapsed in the street before he got home from pure exhaustion. Or he went binge drinking after work to release the stress, and he passed out drunk on the street. So that's how that started. So that's the name of her film, Salaryman, and she crowdfunded it on Indiegogo. I was lucky to catch it 4 hours. See there, 4 hours before the final bell, and she raised about $32,000 US, which was slightly higher than her 30K goal. But before I move on to specific statistics, I want to show you what the international media and the local media were saying about this issue. And so the one thing that really stood out for me was this, where a 24-year-old woman did 159 hours of overtime in 1 month, and she killed herself. She was only 24 years old, and the company was called Dentsu, some advertising agency. And then there's more things like, this is stroke, heart attacks, and suicide, killing hundreds of Japanese employees. This one about a Toyota engineer, and it's from the New York Times. And then the next one, which is the Straits Times, which is an Asian media outlet, also is reporting on the fact that work is literally killing Japanese employees. So it's well covered in the international media. Then, after looking at this, I wanted to find more specific stats about why this happens and why it's so high. And so, from the World Health Organization on the right, you can see that Japan's got quite a high suicide rate. It's not the highest, I'm not saying it's the highest. And in the world, apparently it's Russia. The Lithuanian guy here says that within Europe, Lithuania's suicide rate is quite high.
It's written there.
Where? Oh, the highest rate was observed in Lithuania. It was followed by South Korea and Suriname. Okay, yeah, there you go. So then specifically in Japan, it's not something to be proud about. Okay. And then on the left, death by work. Those are, what happens is when there is a death, the family asked the government to intervene and to ascertain if it was by overwork or not. And then you can see the information about relation from stroke and heart failure, and then suicides and attempted suicides. You can see it's gotten worse in the in the 2000s after that. So specific stats are that the suicide rate is 60% higher than the global average. It costs the Japanese economy $32 billion per year, and 20% of workers are at risk of overwork at any given time. All these stats are backed by sources, which is in my report if you want to find that. So I wanted to dig deeper and figure out, how does this happen? Why do Japanese people die from overwork? How does it even happen in the first place? And one custom which I found very interesting, and Mark, Japanese guy who hasn't arrived yet, confirmed it for me. And this is one of the things. Like Time magazine did research on the most well-rested and sleep-deprived cities, and Tokyo was the first, on 5 hours and 44 minutes per night. That's the average amount of sleep they get per night in Tokyo. And they found this information by some wristband that measures your how far you walk and your heart rate and blah blah blah. So it's user-generated information, and Tokyo came up as first. So how does this happen in the first place? Well, this is what happens in the office. Before you leave the office, you have to apologize to people left behind and say, I'm sorry that I'm leaving you behind, I'm sorry I'm leaving early. And the people that are left behind say, thank you for tiring yourself out. So they actually say thank you before you leave. And then of course the other convention in the office is you actually shouldn't leave the office before your boss does. If you do, it's not good for you. Let's put it that way. And Mark confirmed this as well. So it's kind of crazy, I think, that's how the custom is. You cannot leave before your boss. Well, you can, but you shouldn't.
It's similar in
Yeah.
Korea as well.
Yeah, Korea, Taiwan is similar. But I don't want to focus on Taiwan. It's not opinion. These are facts. This is all backed by research, okay? You don't leave the office without apologizing that you're leaving early, and then everyone says, thank you for being so hardworking. So basically, what it is they value exhaustion. Like, if you're literally exhausted, that you collapse on your desk and you fall asleep, it's like, wow, he worked hard, he did a good job, he deserves a promotion. That's how they see it in Japan. Okay, so besides all the international media and all of that, I wanted to actually get academic research, like really peer-reviewed research as to why this happens. And one of the theses that I looked at was from Yoshio. And the name of his thesis is this, I'll just read it to you quickly. Governing Employees, a Foucauldian Analysis of Death from Overwork in Japan. And so basically, he identified these factors as to why it happens in the first place. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic factors. So first is, obviously, it's the general economy, macroeconomic factors. Then their national culture, the fact that it's structural and deep-rooted. Then those together form the culture of overwork, plus membership capital, panopticon effects, and the fact that suicide is generally acceptable. I will explain each of those concepts individually so you'll understand more, but basically that all works together to create that, dear boss, I quit, and then you kill yourself. Okay, first one. Macroeconomic factors. So firstly, there's a worsening economy, which means that there's no more job security, and that also means that people work more for less money. And then also there's this whole new thing about automation and robots taking your job. So people are scared that robots will take their jobs, or that cheaper non-regular workers will take their jobs. So all of this together, you have to think about it. The economy's not doing well, you have to work harder for less money, you're scared that cheaper labor or automation will take your job. So what are you going to do? You're going to prove that you deserve your full-time job by working harder. And what that means is you'll willingly do unpaid overtime. So that's one major contribution to overworking. Second thing is that the national culture itself. Japanese are very collectivistic, so they value harmony of the group above the individual. They have a strong sense of shame of losing face. So even the slide before where I said you apologize before you leave, even just doing that is quite a big deal. Like you have to be quite, brave to do that. Most people would actually just suffer it and stay and not leave, you know. So it's quite important, quite significant. They also sacrifice themselves for the greater benefit of the company. Hofstede also found that. They have a long-suffering attitude. They suppress their emotions. It's a very Asian thing. It's not only in Japan. You suppress your emotions. It's like onions. You peel back one layer and there's another layer, and you peel back another layer and there's more layers underneath. And they also have an indirect communication style. They don't say what they really feel. So if you ask them their opinion and they say, wow, it's great, probably not. Yeah. Then, of course, it's structural and deep-rooted. A professor at the university said that to actually fix this problem of karoshi, you have to change the entire culture itself. Like, there has to be a simultaneous huge shift in Japanese society. And it's something that's actually not new. It first started in 1969. There was the first case. And it kind of developed after World War II, when the economy in the country was so badly affected by the bomb and all of that in the war, that they had to work hard to rebuild their economy. And then it started from there, and it just didn't end. And Japanese management techniques also add to the problem, and I'll discuss how and why that specifically happened. So moving on to the next thing, which was under the filter, it's membership capital. And what does that mean is, how do you get membership capital? How do you build that? Well, firstly, you do that by doing overtime without reporting it. So you do it and you don't report it, and therefore you get more, let's say, more stickers, more points, more gold stars to your name. You have to sacrifice your private and family life. You have to show enthusiastic participation in any unpaid corporate-related activities afterward. Even if you don't want to, you have to be like, yeah, sure, I want to do that. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Okay, cool. Let's do that after work. And even if it doesn't add to the bottom line, even if it doesn't make the company any more money, it's totally pointless. If you're there, it counts. Like, you have to be a member of their group. And you have to show that you're a loyal company man, and you get evaluated on what they call your life attitude. So it's not even about what's your qualification, your experience. It's literally about what they call a good employee. There's a term for that, where you are a yes man. Everything the boss says, it's yes. The boss says jump, you ask how high. That's it. You never turn down what the boss asks you. And then basically what that means is you belong to the firm instead of working for the firm. Okay, so do you think that guy's dead or just sleeping? Anyone want to guess? Oh, yeah, you're right. Again, that's another guy that Allegra outlined with pancake mix, and that's in her film. Okay, so we cannot say that it's just the fault of their culture and the economy and the Japanese people itself. You also have to take a look at how does Japanese management allow this to happen, or even cultivate this. And in this research that I did, all backed by academic, peer-reviewed data, this is not my opinion, this is how it is in Japan, is they do this. They use the national cultural values as a lever, as leverage to get employees to do what they want without having to pay them. And what they do is, it's kind of a mind control thing. They evaluate you on your life attitude, always specifically on what you achieve or don't achieve. So it's very ambiguous. You don't know when you're being evaluated, if you're being evaluated, how much. So at any given moment, you have to always show that you have a good life attitude. And so it's kind of used as a mind control and a behavior control mechanism. That's the coerced volunteerism, where they say, oh, we're doing this thing after work. It would be great if you could join. But what they really mean is you have to join. And so you're forced to do it. But you're not overtly given the choice to say no, but nobody says no, because you know you cannot say no. It's effective because it's an indirect way of leading employees to do unpaid time. And it's a common strategy for the management to blur the lines between paid and unpaid time and what's mandatory and what's not. So you don't know. You guys are nodding your heads like it's true, right?
Yes, this is the best.
That's how they do it, yeah. It's kind of sad. And then this is the next concept I'm going to explain. I need to briefly explain it on its own, and then you understand how it works in the workplace. It's called the panopticon effect, and it's the most evil thing I've ever seen. Basically, this guy, and he's the father of utilitarianism as well, Jeremy Bentham. He was an English philosopher, and he designed a building where, if you look at the eye, the all-seeing eye, and the people working there in a circle. The next slide has actually got a better picture. If I show you that, okay, that's a prison. And if you can look in the middle, there's a tower in the middle with, I put an eye there. And basically how it works is, there would be prisoners in the cells. And in the tower, there would be security guards, but they shine a bright light. So if you are a prisoner, you don't know when you're being watched or if you're being watched. So you have to always assume you are being watched, right? So it messes with your mind, it's mind control. So the light is bright, and the guards can literally see 360-degree view of each and every prisoner in every cell. But if you're the prisoner, you don't know at any time when you're being watched. And they'll randomly call out, hey, you, stop doing that, no. And so it reinforces that 24 hours of everything that you do, you are being watched. But you don't know, and you can't prove it. So it really messes with your mind. And this prison is the one that Fidel Castro was housed in Cuba. And so how does this work in the Japanese office environment? And basically, Yoshio found that most salarymen must both be the evaluator and evaluated. A salaryman must discipline his subordinates according to their life attitudes, including their willingness to work overtime at the expense of private and family life, and he knows that he will also be evaluated in the same way. So everybody's doing it. As you're working, you're wondering, is your boss looking over your shoulder? And if it's not your boss, it might be your colleague. And they might go to your boss and say, oh, he was on 5 minutes on Facebook. Something like that. So therefore, in the office, you are always being watched, or you feel like you're always being watched. So you watch everything you do, and everything you do is to please the boss. So think about it for a second, how much that would work on your psyche, on your subconscious. There's no break. You're at work, even when you leave work. Whether you put in overtime or not, everything you do, you're always second guessing. Is that a good idea? Will the boss think that's a good idea? Should I do that? Should I do that? And even your own internal thought processes get so bad that Japanese won't even think it because they're scared that their boss might somehow find out that they even thought about clocking in the overtime. So that's how they do it in Japan. It's kind of sad. And then the next thing is that suicide itself seems to be, I'm going to say this word, accepted, and I'll explain why. Firstly, if you look on the left, there's the samurai. This is a very old tradition where the samurai would kill himself by putting the sword in his stomach and then left to right. And then his guts would come out. And then if he didn't die from that, there would be a guy standing right next to him to cut his head off. He would say, okay, cut my head off, and then, yeah. And they would be done in front of an audience, so it would actually be a performance. And there was an honor suicide. That's when, for example, an army general lost a war, and so to apologize to the king that he lost, he would kill himself like that in front of an audience. And then, of course, everyone knows about the kamikaze pilots in World War II. And then their dominant religion is Shinto. And I asked Mark about this because I thought this would also be a very sensitive issue. And he said that it depends on what religion you have and what your basic values are. But in Shinto, suicide is not seen as a sin as it is in Christianity. If you commit suicide, they just believe you return back to nature. So there's not that, there's a difference in Christianity, as you know. that if you commit suicide, you will probably go to hell because it's seen as thou shalt not kill, and you're killing yourself. And then also, there's recent trends that suicide can happen from schoolyard bullying. We're talking elementary school kids, even younger than that, are killing themselves because their classmates are bullying them or ostracizing them, so they kill themselves. Even the elderly are killing themselves because either their kids don't visit them anymore, so they're lonely, they just stop looking after themselves, so they die of neglect. It's really, really sad. Literally every sector of Japanese society is at risk of suicide. It can happen at any time. Young, old, working age, for whatever reason. It's very sad. Anyway, so to recap all the factors, so now you can see, discussed each of them individually, and that's creates this big blast of why suicide happens so easily and readily, and why overworking is so bad. Sorry for the GIF, I just thought it would lighten the mood a little bit. Anyway, so these are the questions I've answered so far. Number one, why does Japan have such a high suicide rate? I covered that. Number two, is Japanese culture killing employees? I'll say yes, short answer, but it is complicated. We're talking about social science, and there really are absolute cases. You cannot say with 100% surety there is. But looking at the research and the stats, we can at least admit that some aspects of the culture make it easy for Japanese management to leverage that and get them to do not paid overtime whenever they want. So the next thing I want to look at is which organizational culture yields better socioeconomic results from a utilitarianism perspective. I'm not trying to say one culture is better than the other. I'm not doing that. I'm just looking at one aspect from a utilitarianism point of view. That's how you should have done it. Okay, so the results. Yes, okay, the results. So is this overtime really all worth it? So I thought about this. They work so much, they kill themselves, they die. Is it worth it? Like, do they make more money? Is the economy doing better? Is it worth it? Are they more productive? And what do you think is the answer? Can anybody guess? No. Do you think it's better results? Do you think they make more money? Anyone? Anyone who says yes? Huh? Yeah? No. Completely the opposite. Research shows this. The most productive countries in the world have the shortest work days. It is the saddest thing I ever read after reading that they kill themselves for working too much. It shows that is actually the problem in the first place, is they should go the opposite way. And research from Harvard Business Review showed that long hours backfire for people and for companies, and I'll specifically tell you why. But before I get to that, I want to take a look at that, which showed about the shortest work hours. And I'm going to look at this information here. It's a survey done by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They only studied 35 countries. But out of those 35 countries, Japan is 20th on the list. And basically how they worked it out was they took national GDP and they divided it by the amount of hours that the employees work in the country. And so Luxembourg is first. It's on this list. It's the most productive country in the world. And they only, look at this, they only have 405,000 people that are working. And I have to say something here, Professor. And okay, I have to state this is my opinion now. I've heard people say in Taiwan, which also argue why they have to work so hard in Taiwan. And the number one thing is they always say is, oh, Taiwan doesn't have any natural resources. We don't have gold, we don't have this, we don't have that. Guess what? Luxembourg doesn't either. Luxembourg doesn't. In the 80s, their natural resources ran out. They don't have natural resources. And look at how small the working population is. And yet, they are the most productive in the world. So what I'm trying to say is that excuses need to be backed on research. Taiwanese people should stop saying and stop complaining, oh, our little island doesn't have natural resources. We don't have this, we don't have that. It's not an excuse. Luxembourg can do it with only 405,000 people. Taiwan can too. And so that's my opinion. Going back to research. So Luxembourg is first, Japan is 20th. So Luxembourg produces $93 0.4 per hour worked. And then Japan, 41. Sorry, 41. So Luxembourg is twice as productive as Japan. And then also, by the way, just to show it for are there any Germans here? I think just one. Germany is 8th on the list, but actually it's the least hours worked. They have the shortest work week. I didn't push that function on average work week hours. If I pushed there, Germany would be first. But Germany is 8th in the rank of GDP per hour work. So Germany actually works the least work week hours, but they're still really, really highly productive. Yeah, they're 8th on the list. Okay, and then this is the one where she's gonna, are you ready?
Okay.
Do you want to guess who's last on the list?
Mexico?
Yes! Mexico is last on the list.
Even Lithuania is there.
And Lithuania is there. So look at this. So,
Okay, now I'm living.
yeah.
Now I'm living.
So now are you angry? It's not my opinion.
No, it's like that is no.
They're, Mexico. Okay, look, they only surveyed 35 countries. I mean, that's not all of the world, but of the modern world, developed and undeveloped countries. Mexico works the most hours for the least pay. And just to throw this in, I didn't put it in here, but Mexico's suicide rate is very small compared to Japan. And I looked into it, and there's a lot of research, but I think, this is my opinion, so I'm off the record, my opinion is, I think that Mexico's suicide rate is lower because they are a Christian nation. The dominant religion is Roman Catholic, and it's seen as a sin. Whereas in Japan, it's ambivalent. You just kill yourself and then you go back to nature. So if you're Buddhist or Shinto, it's not ideal, but they don't look at it like you're going to a fiery hell where for eternity you'll be burning in fire. They don't look at it like you just become a flower or something else. So that's my opinion. I said my opinion. Okay, so moving on from that. Okay, so I wanted to look at how is this possible? How do the shortest working hours create the most money? And this guy, a professor from Stanford University, did a paper. It's called The Productivity of Working Hours. Professor Penkoville, and he discovered that reducing hours can be good for productivity, and he said that output at 70 hours of work differed little from 56. So those 14 hours were a complete waste of time. So basically, 56 hours per week is the optimum amount of time that any employee should work. From that onward, everything is a complete waste of time, and in fact can cost your company money. You can lose money from mistakes, people pushing the wrong buttons on the machine. Anything can go wrong because your employees are fatigued and it gets worse. And then that one shows you that multitasking reduces productivity by 40%. Further research done by Stanford. Media multitaskers pay the mental price. Why? Well, I'll tell you why quickly. They say that people who are regularly bombarded with several streams of electronic information, like Facebook, while you're working you get Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they say that they cannot control their memory and they switch from one job to another, and they cannot perform a job as well as those who complete one task at a time. So multitasking doesn't work. It actually lowers your IQ. One study at University of London showed that people who multitask show the same IQ score as someone who's just smoked marijuana, someone who's just smoked weed. It's the same productivity level. And therefore, doing less, you can accomplish more. So I wanted to just put that cute little GIF in there. It doesn't give you better results. Multitasking, working more than you should, does not give you the results. So don't do it. Okay, so how does this all come into the cultural factor? Okay, so I looked at a United Nations report. They commissioned the World Happiness Report 2017, and Norway came first. Actually, the first 5 were all Nordic countries, except for Switzerland, which is not technically a Nordic country. And they surveyed 156 countries. On the happiness report, Japan came 51st, and Norway first. So I wanted to look at why are these Nordic countries so good at this? Why are they so productive? Why are they the happiest in the world? What do they know that we don't know? And basically, this came out. They work smarter, not harder. Everybody knows this, but why do we not do it? They also know what's the difference between busy and productive. In Japan, You pretend that you're busy just to impress the boss. You move papers around your desk, you're there at your desk, you're clocking in the time, but you're not doing anything productive. It doesn't achieve anything. So anyway, in Nordic countries, they are as serious about leisure as they are about work. You need to be as efficient at work as possible and leave enough time for play. You actually are expected to do that. And you are expected to leave work at 4 or 5 p.m. If you don't, you are frowned upon. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you still here? They're like, go home. It's 4 p.m. Go home. They have a good work-life balance. They don't do idle chit-chat. They don't just talk with the employees to waste time. They don't do time wasting and time fillers. Everything they do is 100% effective. If it's not, then it's a complete waste of time and you lose your job. So that's why everybody works effectively. So then I wanted to look at the 6-hour workday. How did it work out? And will Britain and America adopt one? So basically the research showed this, that on a 6-hour workday, employees get sick less, they have lower stress, and they actually work harder because they're more motivated to do so. They produced the same amount in 6 hours as they did in 8. There were less conflicts at work, better focus, people were more refreshed and more creative, and it actually even brought in more business. And how did they do this? Employees cut out distractions like social media and the little things we do when we are bored or tired, or instead just focus for 6 hours. So I thought that was quite positive information to look at. And one thing I have to say is it wasn't perfect, as nothing is. Where it didn't work is in the healthcare industry, where, for example, some patients need 24-hour care. So if you take a 6-hour shift for 24 hours, you'd need to hire 4 nurses in one day. So the government found out that the nurses were happy, the nurses were effective, productivity was extremely high, but because they had to hire 4 nurses instead of 1, it increased their expenditure. So from the government perspective, they were like, oh no, in the healthcare industry, maybe this doesn't work. But these results come from normal office jobs. You know, you're just at a desk. I think in industries where you're at a machine and the more tired you get, the more mistakes you'll make, this will be more effective. But in healthcare, it's the same result, but it will cost more money. And this, I think this is why it hasn't been done in most countries. I'm nearly done. The end. These are my results, or the conclusion to my research. Japan has a suicide epidemic. We cannot deny that. Japan has a karoshi problem, a death from overwork problem. Japan has a low relative productivity. They are overworking for nothing. It's totally for nothing. It's the saddest thing. 6-hour workday increases productivity, and Nordic organizational culture produces greater socio-economic benefits from a utilitarianism perspective. And that's my research.
So, any question?
Well, just my opinion, only
Yes.
my opinion.
Is your opinion, or is it?
Just only my opinion. On the last part, I agree because I was working in Scandinavian countries and I did an internship in Korea, which is very close to Japanese culture. And I could say that the facts that Sean told us is actually true. But I would like to ask Luffy, this East Asia culture, okay, but let's not say East Asia, Japanese problem gonna change in the future? Because like I think the same way, because it's come as you like, this is like a good example. It's come from the past, you know, all the suicides and everything. So I think this is in the future it's not gonna change at all. Like no matter how many like.
It's going to take decades.
Exactly,
The
decades.
new generation that will have a different way of thinking. That's not so traditional.
But even the new generation is coming. They call this otaku, like you know, who's like, and they also relate to some suicides. So yeah, it's a bit different.
Any other questions? Do you want to say anything about?
Not question, but more like comment, like complimenting what you said, that Mexico is also like Roman Catholic. We don't have like that kind of high suicide rates because we think that we will go to hell now. It's more because, okay, Mexico, it's really close to the US border.
Yeah.
And we do have like a lot of high rates because of all the, let's say, non-educated or with not an official degree. For get a job in Mexico, it's really hard. You won't get one unless you have like a bachelor degree. So there is this American dream. So there's always a lot of people that just go directly to the US illegally, they cross the border, and they get like these, let's say like farm jobs, or like in construction side. So that's why there's like a lot of working hours, but like the salary is not that high. And also, like you will see in my presentation too, Mexico, like Mexican people, we tend to spend our money like we gain it, and we spend it directly in our realization of our dreams or our like the first thing that we want to do, and we don't really care that we don't have money later. We say like, oh, money will come. So it's like, but yeah, like I totally agree. I wasn't like really surprised when you said like reality is reality. I mean.
Yeah, everything I presented is objective
Sources,
Oh,
data.
yeah.
I have 4 pages of references.
No, sure. Like,
Actually, if I had enough time and I could do primary research, I would have, but this is not my thesis, and I'm working on my thesis as well, which is totally different, so that's why I did it. Anyway, can someone help me to copy this onto the desktop in one of those?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to email this to Professor?
Just-
It's really
Yeah,
big,
no,
it's a
just-
big file.
No, just
Just
Close.
what? Yeah, and then?
then drag it. Click and
Drag
drag. Yeah, okay.
What?
That's
Yeah, that's
it.
it.
You did it! Thank you.
well, really that's like my paper is a study comparison of the Hofstede dimensions between Mexico and Taiwan. First of all, I have to say that I don't agree in some of the dimensions that Hofstede signaled, not even for Taiwan or for Mexico. I felt that they are like really general, that they don't go like deep into culture sometimes, even if they are supposed to go. How did I change it here?
You can use the,
It's this one?
yeah, and then push.
Okay. Okay, so firstly, like the agenda is like I'm just gonna pinpoint which are the Hofstede dimensions, and then do like a small comparison between Mexico and Taiwan. That's pretty it. So I found really interesting what Hofstede says, that national culture cannot be changed, but we all have to understand it and respect it. Most of all that right now we are in like this globalized world. So the Hofstede dimensions are about power distance index. This is like how societies accept hierarchies and how the power is distributed. Individualism versus collectivism, I think that the word explains it at all. Masculinity versus femininity. It's like in this one, how a society goes more for values, or they go more for, let's say, competitivity or stuff like that, uncertainty avoidance, how do you feel with the unknown, long-term orientation versus short-term in culture, and indulgence versus restraint. So as you can see, Mexico and Taiwan, in Hofstede, they are in sometimes like really similar, but in others are like a little bit different. So for example, the first one, power distance. Mexico and Taiwan both are hierarchical order societies, but the difference is like, okay, in both Taiwan and Mexico, family it's really important. Like in work, you can see also these hierarchy accepted, but like the main difference that I found is that in Taiwan, the hierarchy comes first of all because of the age. As older that you get, the more power that you have. Like I am not saying that if you have like a good economic status or knowledge or experience, you won't get that that power or that hierarchy. But it's more shown of what I have seen, that Taiwanese people, there's like as older as you get, it's like you're more powerful you become, not always, not only in your family, it's also in work. And compared to Mexico, it will be more if about your economic status and experience that you have in work. For example, of course, family always, in my case, my dad is the boss. Like he is the chief, the one that has the absolute power. In work, it could be me if I have like a better knowledge than my boss. Actually, my boss will go and say like, hey, what do you think? Should we do it this way? And here in Taiwan, I have found that it's always they go to the others. I have also experienced, I was trying to do business in here, And for my dad, he gave me like the absolute power of my family company. And here I was trying to work with a Taiwanese family, and they said like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to like the one that is above you, like in this case my dad. And I was just like that, but it's me here. They said like, here you can go do it, and they said like, no, we want to talk with someone older than you because you don't have the experience for me. That was like a little bit shocking for me in this case, because the one that dared to come here, it was me, not my dad. Then individualism versus collectivism. Both Mexico and Taiwan are collectivistic societies. But the difference here is that in Mexico and Taiwan, we both have like strong family ties, but Taiwanese society have stronger ones. For example, like they have generations living together. 3 or 4 generations could be living together in the same house, and in Mexico we don't have that. In Mexico, for example, like you will have like the parents and their kids till the kids are old enough to live by themselves. So this means when they go to college. As soon as you go to college, you are supposed to move out. If not, you will be considered yourself as a failure, that you couldn't being able to earn your own money. And so it's more in Mexico, you will have more like this individual thinking, like I have to do it first by myself to be able to take care of my parents, but taking care of my parents doesn't mean that I will move back to them. This means that I will be able to take them on vacations and help them to support their house, but I could be also supporting mine. Then masculinity versus femininity. This is like 100 like really different. In Mexico is more like masculine family. There is like always a competition. This competition is always like to be the role model. So you will always do whatever it takes to get your dreams and aspirations. It doesn't matter the way you take it. Normally, well, if it's not illegal, that will be okay, but sometimes it is illegal, so that's why Mexico has a lot of corruption rates. And Taiwanese society, I found that it's more like feminine. They try to avoid conflicts. There is like this like saving face. They want to be like, they put honor above all. So let's say, for example, in Mexico, I will just say something straight to you and I won't mind how you feel. And here I will have to find the way to talk to you saying that I am not happy with this, and I won't do it like in front of everybody. I will say like, oh, can we speak like alone? And I will say it that way. Uncertainty avoidance. Both countries are uncomfortable with the unknown. Mexico has a special need of rules and laws, but we always break them. We never follow them. This also goes into family. We have like this code that family will always come first, but we always have this, let's say, jump of faith. As you were saying, like Mexico goes for the American dream. So like this is our jump of faith. We know that we might get a bit far from our families. This is not a thing that we like, but we need to go to try to see, to take a jump of faith, to get more money, and to be able to achieve and be able to do our dreams. Outside of like Taiwanese culture, I found it that it's like they do try to preserve above all their cultures and traditions and bring it to their present. They are always carrying them. In Mexico, we say like, okay, my family used to do it this way sometimes, and we have this tradition. Of course, we bring them, but we are celebrating it in our way, not as they were used to. Mexico, we sometimes go and ask for advice to our parents or to more experienced people, but we are not constantly looking for their approval of what I have seen here. And like, for example, for what I have seen is like Taiwanese society feel like in a kind of like a comfort zone, and this kind of comfort zone comes always back to the culture and the traditions. They want to keep them and preserve them. And in Mexico, but we sometimes take like this jump of faith and we see like, okay, let's see what happens. If it's bad, we just go back and try it again after we recover. Then short versus long-term orientation. So as I said, both countries have like a strong tie to cultural traditions. But for us, culture is not helping in the immediate concerns. Like for example, for me, I won't say
because I don't know. For example, like religion, God says that killing is bad. So if I need to kill in self-defense, I will kill in self-defense. So I won't go to hell in this case. And in Taiwanese society, there's like always this strong tie to the past that has been passing through generation by generation. And they try to keep it this way, so they don't do certain things, for example, as a stealing, because like your family ghosts are watching you, your family that has passed away, they are keeping a track of what you're doing. So that's, for us, we don't, like culture at the end, it doesn't help in that. Then indulgence versus restraint. So I found that Mexico, it tends to be like really indulgent. It's like Mexicans, we have a specific way of seeing in life. These ways, as I was saying, like if I earn 10,000 bucks right now, I will go directly and spend them in this moment. I would say, I don't mind. I will be happy these 5 minutes that I am spending my money. Then I have to worry. It will be okay. And in Taiwan society, as you can see, there is not always like an inclination for indulgence or restraint. But I found it that it's more actually a restraint. That because Taiwan is like a youth of what I have seen of my friends. Some of they are always looking for their parents or elders' approval. They are always asking, like if it's okay like this, for example, what I have seen is what they are studying. I have been asking some people, it's like, what do you study law? Because my dad asked me to. And I was just like, but do you like law? No, I hate law. I was just like, but then why you are forcing yourself to do something for the rest of your life that you are not liking to do? It was like, because that is what is expected of me. Like, let's keep the family business. It's like, I don't have anything against keeping the family business, but if you are not doing something that you like for the rest of our life, I find it like a little bit complicated in my personal way of seeing it. So also like Taiwanese society, they always try to keep like a guidance. It's like always elders, like parents or grandparents, living in the house together for generations. They don't give like enough freedom to the kids, like, and they always keep this path. So I found that this, in this case, how steep was that? What's wrong? Like, it's more like a restraint. Not your end, that's it? Small. Questions, answers, comments?
Any question?
Have you, this kind of discrimination that you've suffered here, because you're maybe I guess a woman and younger, how have you overcome that, or?
Well, like, first I did really wanted to do business, so the thing that I just pick the phone and I call like that, just talk to them and say to them that I have the power, like the authority to do things here. And once he did that, like, they start collaborating with me, but at the same time they just want to see that someone older than me is there. Why, I don't know. What could that be? Can I ask that question?
Yes. In Asian country, I think we respect to the elder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also respect to the wisdom. If you are smart, you got the experience, and then we all respect to you as well. Actually, quite similar. You mentioned your country prefer respect to the experience.
Yes.
Actually, in Taiwan, we also respect to the experience.
No, yes, I said that.
So maybe for the elderly, they got the more experience as well.
Okay.
Maybe, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
So, and now you're also doing some internship in Taiwan, or doing some business?
Business,
What?
like family business here. I am trying to bring tequila to Taiwan.
So how long you doing this job in Taiwan?
Well, it's a family company, so like since I arrived, around 4 months.
So is it your own employed?
It's self-employed, yes.
Right.
Like my dad pays me, so.
Okay.
So let's say that yes.
Okay.
Lunch money is.
Well, like exactly. Like he pays the house, so I work for him.
Okay.
No, not in a long time.
Would you like to marry a Taiwanese guy?
Yes?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. That level, like personal, because I don't want to get married. Like,
Do you think this culture thing, because you know the Taiwanese family usually lives with generations, would like influence your decision?
yes. Like I have been living by my own for around 6 years already. So and I like spending time with my family, but a week, it's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
More
nice.
time, it's like with my dog. I love my dog. I miss more my dog than my dad. So in this case, it's like
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I teach English, and sometimes students says, you know, after I graduate my university, the parent says you can come back and live with us. Well, if I want to come back, like parents say, what like, you wish. Go find a job and go find a place of
just
yourself.
like for example in this case, like when I go back, if I go back, like I know that I can stay at my dad's place for a couple of months, maybe meanwhile I find a job. But for me, it will be like really uncomfortable. Like being back there, it will be like again, ask for permission, say where you are. That doesn't work after living 6 years by your own.
Okay. So, thank you so much.
Okay, hello everybody. As you can see, my topic today, the analysis I did, is basically to have a look on the impact of the Chinese market on the recent success of American movie productions. How do I click? So the structure of the presentation is going to be, first of all, a quick introduction of the whole topic, like why am I doing this, what are the questions. Second of all, we're going to have a look at the development of the American and also of the Chinese film industry. Then third of all, I'm going to analyze the performance of American movies in the Chinese market, followed by an evaluation and like talking about the advantages and disadvantages. And last of all, I'm going to give you a conclusion. Oh, that was the wrong one. Alright, so let's go over some facts first of all, so that you get an idea of the whole situation. The first fact is that the whole box office revenue in the country of China in the year of 2016 was worth 6.58 billion US dollars. So that's quite a huge figure. Also, the average yearly growth of the revenue of box office over the last decade in China was an average of 35% each year. The next fact is that like 41.7% of the box office revenue is actually from imported movies, which are most of all American movies. And all these like putting together leads to the fact that China right now is the second largest movie market in the world and also the fastest growing movie market in the world. So basically the objective of this presentation of my study, I wrote down like 3 major questions. First question is, what does the future hold for American produced movies in the market of China? Second question, to what extent will the Chinese market influence American productions? And the last question is, how can both markets best benefit from each other? The first thing I did is did some literature review. I was having a look if already some studies or some books or some research was done on this topic. And it is quite a new topic, so like the latest literature I could find is from 2006 and 2007. And basically the main, the main points from these authors, the first one, Curtin, he's basically stating that a late boom in the Chinese market has occurred. And the current development is basically leading that China is going to be a serious competitor to its US counterpart. The second author, Sue, she's stating that China is Hollywood's #1 overseas box office contributor, but she's also paying attention to conflict between the Chinese state and the film industry. Third author, Lee, she's stating that there's basically a positive brand image of Hollywood in the Chinese market. So Hollywood movies are regarded, like they're like welcome. The next author, Stannard, he's basically saying that the knowledge of American actors and American movies in China is present. It is quite good, especially among the teenagers. And last of all, she wrote about the dominance of Western culture and English media in China. Alright, so let's have a look at the development of the American and Chinese film industry. I'm going to give you like a short timeline for each market. If we're having a look at the history of the American market, the year 1889 can be seen as the birth of cinema with the invention of the so-called kinetoscope, which was like the first device that you could watch a movie on. Then by the year 1894, an average film was like 12 minutes, so just that you get like kind of a figure of the development. In 1927, it was a big milestone that actually the first spoken words were ever recorded on film. During the 1940s, of course, Second World War, like the main purpose of the film was like war propaganda. In the 60s, it started that this whole business, the whole industry became more globalized and was also exporting to different countries. By the 1970s, the focus on movies production became like more controversial, for example. I put it down, the movie Clockwork Orange. Does anyone know it by any chance? Okay, very nice. Just like as an example of this, 80s, 90s, of course, there was like a huge technological development. So movies like Terminator, that probably everyone knows, like came out in this time period. And nowadays we reached the 21st century, and basically the current development in cinema was like the development of IMAX, which basically means like just like more frames per second, like bigger screens in cinemas, better sound system, and then of course the whole 3D technology and Avatar as an example of these kind of movies, and also like the big revenue that these movies create nowadays. The Chinese development is a bit different to that. First of all, the foundation of like the movie market can be seen in the year 1913. During the 30s, which was actually the first peak of movie productions, there was basically like 60 movies on average produced per year. During the 1940s, the market was still characterized by a steady growth. A big change happened in the 1950s and lasted until the 1970s, because basically the Communist Party like took power in China, and therefore the state was taking over the movie industry, which led actually to the fact that many production companies had to close down. And this lasted until 1978, where actually a big reopening of film studios happened. But many people like in literature speak of an underdevelopment and compare the quality of the movies to like American standard in like the 30s or 40s. So it is probably because of this gap they have in between here that this underdevelopment kind of happened. In the 1980s, the movies became more diverse, which also is connected to Hollywood movies as like kind of a role model, like they were doing action and sci-fi movies, so China adapted to that and did movies of that kind by themselves. In 1993, they opened their market for the first time for foreign movies, so they actually saw like a big opportunity to grow their industry and to create more revenue. But this was already shut down 3 years later, where the government actually didn't like this development at all. They wanted to protect their like foreign movies and wanted to protect their values, and actually came up with strict regulations for foreign movies entering the Chinese market. And basically right now, 21st century, there is like a boom of the market, as I just mentioned before. And for example, the Warcraft movie serves as a brilliant example of that, because it was like really disappointing in the US home market, but created a huge turnover in the Chinese market. So to like show you some more figures about the growth of the Chinese market, this is basically the rise of box office from 2011 to 2016. So you can see this is like a really steady and huge growth. Basically the same development in the number of newly added movie screens per day. So in the year 2015 they had like an average of 22 new movie screens added somewhere in China per day. And the last figure is the revenue of online movie ticketing platforms, which shows like the same development as the other two statistics. So just to explain you the governmental restrictions in the market of China. Basically China has a quota for imported movies that are allowed to be shown in China during a year. So if we take a look at this from 92 to 2002, only 10 foreign movies were allowed to be shown in China during a whole year. And development is actually quite positive. In 2002 it was increased to 20 movies, 2012 34, and now it's actually 38 movies. But of course, like compared to the amount of international movies that is being made, this is like a really small figure. These imported movies are divided into 3 categories that we can see on the chart here. First one is basically revenue sharing imports, where basically the foreign production company plus the Chinese like production or distribution company share on a percentage of revenue that they get from the box office turnover. So it's 14 revenue sharing movies, 3D and IMAX, and 20 like normal movies. And then there's also the flat free movies where the where China basically pays the foreign production company just a fixed amount, and then this company like don't get anything of the turnover, and like China gets the whole box office revenue. So this year is basically done with like big Hollywood movies, because of course the studios want to have a part of the turnover as well, and the flat fee usually applies to like smaller and independent movies. As I mentioned before, there's also a censorship in China. So basically the Chinese government is really concerned that every movie they bring into their country obtains like Confucian morality, political stability, and also social harmony. So for a lot of movies it is actually really difficult or nearly impossible to be shown in the Chinese market. Okay, now I would like to have a look at the performance of American movies in the Chinese market. I basically created a small chart for that to have like a nice overview. I hope that it is kind of readable. Basically, I just like compared movies from the year 2014 to 2017 and just put down the revenue they created in China and the revenue they created in the USA, and they're all like big budget produced movies in the USA. Actually, the first movie was Pacific Rim, like in the year 2014. As you can see here, they nearly made the same amount in the domestic market, USA, and also in the Chinese market. The blue one is the box office in the USA, and the orange one is the box office in China. Whereas the amount in the United States was seen as a big disappointment, because they expected in the domestic market to create much more revenue, because the movie had like a budget of 150 millions, and it only brought in 100 million in the domestic market. It was seen as a big disappointment. But in China, no one expected that like they generated the same amount of box office as in the United States. So for China, it was a big success. I'm going to skip this one first. The next movie was Terminator Genesis, which also like really disappointed in the United States. And you can see here that they actually created like a higher turnover in China than in the domestic market. Like I mentioned before, like it is seen as a big milestone, the movie Warcraft, because it really failed in the home market, like only doing about 50 million in revenue. And in China, it did like 3 times the size of revenue as it did in the domestic market. So it was like really important to like break even with this movie to have actually support of the Chinese market. The next one would be Transformers 5, and you can basically see over the development of the time that the kind of amount of revenue on these big budget movies is like even rising and rising. And it basically peaks in the latest Fast and Furious movie, where like the highest, like the biggest ever revenue was actually achieved in the Chinese market. So now I was wondering, okay, what's the reasons for this success, and also did some research on that. And basically there's like a sociological and also economical reasons. The sociological reason is that there's actually like a rising popularity in the population when it comes to American movies, especially to like those big budget Hollywood blockbuster movies. And of course this increases the demand for American movies in China. And then when it comes to the economical factor, basically due to the growing middle class in China, this of course increases the buying power of the Chinese population, so they can afford it to go to cinema. And the last point is like the whole growth of cinemas. As I showed to you before, like the screens that were added per day, there's actually like a lot of investment that is done into the movie market. And of course this leads like to an easier access, so that more people in more towns have like an easy access to go to the cinema. Then another different, like another important thing for the success in the Chinese market is that actually Hollywood started to adapt movies to the Chinese market, which basically means that the movie you will see in China will be slightly different than the movie you will see in the United States or in other parts of the world. So I chose Iron Man 3 as an example of this. On an economical level, the United States production company decided to cooperate with a Chinese production company, so that made it a lot easier for them to actually pass like all the restrictions and to make the movie shown into the Chinese country, because the Chinese production company got a share of the revenue, and also it allowed like the United States company to get a bigger margin for the revenue share actually. And then when we look to the artistic level, basically to the content of the movie, when it comes to Iron Man 3, for China there were actually like 4 minutes of additional footage created like only for China. And this included like a Chinese actor that were added to the movie, and also like a Chinese location. And also like the ethnicity of the villain of Iron Man 3 was like slightly changed to make him appear like look less Asian, because usually he's like from Asian origin. And they basically did like all these 3 points to make the movie like more appealing and less risky for the Asian market, which in the end led to a great success. Another example would be like the latest Star Wars installment, Rogue One. Basically the challenge for the Chinese market is that this movie was just the 2nd Star Wars movie that was ever shown in China. So basically China has like a lack of the huge fan base that exists like in all the other parts of the world concerning Star Wars movies. So basically what they did as a solution, I mean this is not like officially stated, but this is what people assume and what actually kind of makes sense. They actually casted 2 of China's most famous actors. One of them is Donnie Yen. You might know him from the Ip Man movies, if anyone's familiar with that. and also they shoot like a couple of the scenes on Chinese locations. So just to kind of in the end introduce the franchise to the Chinese audience, to rise the popularity of Star Wars, because there will be more Star Wars movies coming, so that in the end they can also like aim at creating a huge revenue in the Chinese market when it comes to these movies. Okay, now I would like to go through a quick evaluation. Basically, first of all, what are the chances for the American industry if they look at the market in China? And well, basically, first of all, the Chinese market is a big booster of the global revenue. Because here I've got another chart. It basically is only about the box office from January and February in 2017. And it is about the like 8 successful movies in these 2 months. And basically China made up 49% of these 8 movies in these 2 months, whereas the domestic United States market only made up 11%. So there you can already see that the Chinese market is really valuable for the revenue of American produced movies. Second of all, the negotiation potential for American companies when it comes to the revenue share is still high in the Chinese market, because so far, like on average, they get like 25% of the revenue, whereas the worldwide average, if they would distribute their movie to another country, would be around 40%. So there's still some negotiation potential left. And then last of all, it could mean an improvement in quality, because now basically American producers, they have to aim to win the attention of an international audience and also of Chinese audience. So this might lead to an improvement of the quality of movies. But of course, there's also a downside. There's also risks in the Chinese market. If we look at the like mere entertainment level, basically because of these movie adaptations that I just talked to you about, they bear the fear of reduction in creativity, because some people fear that maybe now like American studios play it safe, they want to fit the Chinese regulations, so they will be less creative when it comes to building up their movie. And also they fear that less controversial movies are being made, because for a controversial movie it is kind of impossible to be shown in the Chinese market because of the like huge censorship. And then there's the political level, and this is also just the opinion of a few people that I kind of read articles from. They kind of fear that with that China is basically expanding its influence on the USA, kind of subconsciously. Because now American studios, they want to bring their movies into the Chinese market. They're only concerned about the revenue, and so they kind of feel like that the freedom of media also in the American market gets limited, because studios, they kind of, like I said before, they want to play it safe. They don't risk that much anymore. They rather make it to fit the Chinese regulations in order to just create more revenue for them. Okay, so now to draw a conclusion at last. Basically coming back to the questions, the first question was, what does the future hold for American produced movies in the market of China? And on the positive side, the market potential in China, as the data proved, is quite huge. This is due to an increasing globalization, due to the increasing investments in the cinema in China, and also due to the rising popularity in the population. But at the same time, there's still the risk of the power of the Chinese government, because they, in the end, can decide what movie they want to bring into their country and what movie they don't want to bring. But at the same time, there's like an interdependency between both countries, because America needs China basically to boost their revenue, and at the same time, China needs the American movies to develop their like basically film industry, to develop their turnover. So of course there's an interdependency, and if they do like good negotiations, if they do a lot of talk, this will actually be a positive point in the future. Second question, to what extent will the Chinese market influence American productions? This is basically because of the adaptations of the movies, and I divided it into like independent studios and then Hollywood studios. And I think that for independent studios this will have a low impact, because they're still focusing on the artistic freedom. They're still more focused on the message of their movie than on creating just a mere turnover. But when it comes to Hollywood studios, of course, those studios, they're basically aiming at making money, and they're evaluated by their financial success. So in the end, they don't really have any other choice than paying attention to the second largest movie market in the world right now. And the last and guess most important questions, how can both markets best benefit from each other? And in my opinion, like first of all, if they do regular communication and no negotiation, this can be like to a huge advantage for them, because there's still this interdependency between both countries. Then second of all, studio cooperations is a really productive way and a really good way to bring movies into the Chinese market, because if studios cooperate and they both get their share of the revenue, it is basically a win-win situation for both countries. And last of all, the transfer of knowledge is like a key to success, because if both countries work together and share their knowledge that they have on the production of movies, it will satisfy like the audience, the moviegoers in the end, because then for them the value of movies will increase. Yeah, that's basically the references. And any questions left? Thank you very much.
I do have a question. Sorry, I have to go, but I have a question. What's your interest level in movie making? Do you have a background in that, like movie production? Or?
Not in movie making. Like from early on, I'm really interested in movies, and basically kind of just watched a lot of movies and series and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But when it comes to movie making, there's no professional background or anything. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I have a question too. Like if you look at the situation and vice versa, what do you think is like the reasons why Chinese film industry doesn't have success in Hollywood? Like if you see the recent movies like The Wall that Matt Damon flopped. There's one film with Keanu Reeves about samurais in Hollywood, flopped again. It just doesn't fit in Hollywood. Like if the Chinese market helped Hollywood to boost the revenue, it should be like vice versa. Because I think that's one of the reasons why they don't give enough votes for the movies. Because like the Chinese movies in Hollywood, they always flop.
I mean, it's difficult because, like, if you see it worldwide, of course, America is the #1 when it comes to movies, you know? Like, every country loves American movies. This is what they would always put in first place. But then I guess, I don't know, it's just about the preferences of the population, you know? Because it seems like in China, they kind of love those action movies, you know, because they love the Fast and Furious franchise, they love the latest Terminator movie, which was regarded as really bad, you know, but they still loved it. They love all the Transformer movies, so...
It's very bad, but still they love
it.
Yeah,
they kind of like it, and they like the franchises. And I guess in America, there's just not that kind of fan base for Asian movies.
Okay, another one? Yes?
Don't you think that the American movies could affect or could be a threat to the Chinese local filmmakers?
Of course, I think they are basically a threat, that's for sure. Because this is actually the reason why the government put up this censorship and this quota, because they want to protect their domestic filmmakers, and also they want to control the content of the movies. Because they know, okay, if some local production companies do a movie, it will most certainly stick to the values that the government wants to see. And sure, if an American movie is shown at the same time, and it is like a bigger movie, and like the advertising and marketing is bigger of that movie, of course many people would probably prefer to see this movie instead of a local movie, and this would lead to a decrease of the revenue of local movies, of course.
How do you feel as a consumer, you know, because there's so many speculation during these days that the movies that we want to see is postponed each year just because of, you know, there is not enough quotes by the Chinese market. I feel like, you know, they're more concentrating on Chinese market instead of like other parts, especially from Europe, you know.
It's kind of like you can't even imagine that only like in 1 year, like in China, you're only
38,
basically
yeah.
you're only allowed to see like
38.
38 like American movies. It's kind of it's
Modi,
really
what
less.
about you? What do you think about this station? You're from China. You're from China. So how many movies do you see a year?
明年你是看多少
Okay,
电影？
translate.
他问你每年看多少电影？
每年啊
啊，
，one。
One.
我不太
One per year.
I don't like yes. I don't
Because
like.
he always study really hard.
Oh, right. No time.
Oh, that just download from the website.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so thank you very much.
真的，我看过很多部，